officially at 8:30. Welcome everyone to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group in Doylestown, PA. My name's Ron. I'm an alcoholic. How you all doing? Quick reminder, we have a Facebook page. It keeps you pretty much informed of what's going on, not only in this room, but the areas. It's really informative. There's speakers on there to listen to, lots of events. There's like picnics and all kinds of AA stuff. If you have anything with your group or anything to do with AA, please post it in that. It's on Facebook. It's very easy to find. We also have a website. On the back table, you'll find a bunch of flyers there. If you guys have any flyers for any AA events, please feel free to lay them out there. It keeps everybody informed. It keeps, there's so much to do in AA. A lot of times people don't even know what's going on. And so this information is vital that we get it shared because there's some great stuff, a lot of fun to be done in AA. So with that, anyway, this is really important. Each year we set aside September, it's Annual Women's Month. We have all women speakers all month. It's 5 weeks of that. And then we waited at the lineup of getting somebody had to reschedule for the end of this month, so now we got 6 weeks of women. Beth was nice enough to come out here. It's going to be pretty epic tonight. Right, Beth? You promised us epic, right? We're going to get Brian, put a cup and chair. Sit and relax. Please be mindful of no cigarette smoking on church property. That's pretty much universal at all churches nowadays. Thanks, thank you.
All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Brian, and I'm an alcoholic. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street at 8:30 in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. The business meeting for this group meets here every Saturday at 7 o'clock to 7:30 p.m. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through practice and principles of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anybody new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name?
I'm going to introduce an alcoholic.
Please, welcome.
Danny, an alcoholic.
Dan, welcome.
Hi, Jeff. That's an alcoholic.
Jeff, welcome.
Name Holly, I'm an alcoholic.
Holly, welcome. Anybody else? All right, welcome. All right. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship with anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and that is willing to sponsor. Please raise their hands. Nice, okay. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs to help those who can't afford them can put donations in the jar on the back table marked Big Book and CD donations. If you would like a CD of any speaker, past or present, see me or Ron before or after the meeting. They are available free of charge. And Mike's going to come up here and read the AA preamble.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike. I'm an alcoholic. This is the AA preamble. Excuse me. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And we have asked the lovely Kim to come up and read the AA 12 Steps of Recovery.
Hi, I'm Kim and I'm an alcoholic. Say 12 steps of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Brian?
All right, seventh tradition, every A group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, we're going to pass the basket. We have no dues or fees, but we do have expenses. This group provides many services, and your donations will help us to cover the cost of rent, big books, CDs, events, and workshops. As Ron mentioned, there's absolutely no smoking on the church property. That's a request from the church, and they're very generous to let us use this beautiful facility, and that's really the only thing they ask of us. So if you could be considerate when you're coming here and leaving, just, keep it clean, keep it as we found it. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. And now to introduce our speaker for tonight, a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group on loan to us from the Phoenix Group of Lawrence, New Jersey. Please help me welcome Beth S.
I feel like I'm about to graduate. Hi, I'm Beth. I'm an alcoholic. I haven't found it necessary to take a drink since November 29th of 2003, and for that, God's entirely responsible. I show up. What it was like. I just want to say that I'm really fighting with my ego on the fact that I got to kick off the Women's Month on the kickoff. And, because how the worm does turn, right? So 14 years ago, I was not about women. I was not about hanging out with chicks or learning from chicks or being your friend or being vulnerable with you or looking you in the eye. I didn't know how to do that. I was not a woman of women. I was not a woman of honor and dignity in any sense. I was a hot mess in a short dress. And now, I didn't know there were stairs, or I wouldn't have worn the long dress, because I was in 5th grade and I fell up the stairs at my DARE graduation, and my dress came over my head. And they got that on film, because that was like the VHS days, So I have that forever. And that's kind of what it was like to be me. So what it was like, it was that way before I started to drink. What it was like is that I was always full of fear, and I was nervous as heck, and I was anxious, and I knew I was different from you. I knew I didn't fit in right away. I got to kindergarten, and I felt like you all knew the deal. Like you knew how to hang out with one another. You knew how to play with one another. I felt like I got in there, and I didn't belong. And I don't know if that was true, but it was my truth. And I felt like that everywhere. I felt awkward, right? I'm an only child. I am the only child. This is really close. Am I really loud? I feel really loud. I'm good? All right. The guy with the vest, I'm good. He looks trustworthy. I will say that I'm an only child. My father was a truck driver, so I'm also praying really hard that I don't curse. because that was passed down to me. And my mother was an accountant for the lumber yard that my dad drove lumber for. And we grew up in White Trash, New Jersey, also known as Hopatcong. And there was no shame in the neighborhood. Like, everybody kind of minded everybody else's kids. And I was a latchkey kid. My parents had to work till late at night, and I made sure that I got myself in the house, and I rode bikes with the other kids after school, and like kept an eye out for cops so we didn't get in trouble, stuff like that. And I was weird because I was an only child, and my parents spoke to me like a little adult. I didn't have like the kid talk with other kids. So I got to kindergarten, and I was like, "Hi, how are you doing?" And everyone was like, "Yeah, it was a little." I was just weird, and my mom didn't have curly hair, and she combed my hair out, so I had this Christmas tree of hair, and I was chubby. So I'm this chubby, tall kid with big hair and a vocabulary, and I didn't fit, and I knew that you guys were going to figure that out. So I just started to watch what you did, and I emulated you. And I learned to have no sense of self. I learned to have no sense of who I was or what I liked or what I didn't like. And I started to do things to make myself feel whole, because I felt fractured. And what I would do to feel whole is take something from outside of me and put it in me. And what I mean is, my first drug of choice was Little Debbie cakes. So I would get these little delicious treats. Sometimes they were the zebra cakes, sometimes they were little pinwheels. Sometimes I got crazy, I got this orange cupcake. That was fun. But everything was wrapped in cellophane, and I would hear that cellophane, and I would know that I was going to be okay. Like, I would eat that thing, and it would give me this, like, warm, happy glow, and I'm, like 5. And I felt good, and I learned that something that is not of me can make me feel whole and complete and okay. And so Sugar and I got along really well up front. And that love affair went until I was about 20 years old. But as I'm learning how to, soothe myself with things outside of myself, my world is breaking down around me. I'm already awkward and different. I already feel weird. And then my mom gets diagnosed with MS, and I'm 7. And the thing that she can tell me about that is that it's a terminal disease, and someday she's going to die from it. Because when my mom was diagnosed with MS, the only thing they had to treat it was B12 shots. So it's like, clock ticking, kid, we don't know. And my grandparents had already passed away to that point. Like, everybody I knew died except for mom and dad, and I'm an only child, and now mom's got this thing, right? And I wasn't cool with that at all. And I was probably 10 when I came home from a Girl Scout trip to my mom standing on the lawn to say, "We have to go to St. Barnabas, your father's in the hospital." Come find out, he has Crohn's disease, and he continuously gets perforations in his colon and his intestine. He'd get these fistulas where, like, part of his body would reroute itself. We have a marvelous machine, and sometimes things break down, And what I understood was that this was not a permanent gig, and these guys were not always going to be here. But in me, at the same time, was born the idea that I could somehow control whether or not my parents got sick and died by how well I behaved. So I started to behave very well, and I started to really seek to do well in school and really just put my nose to the grindstone, because I don't know what gave me this idea. It's just something that was born in me, that if I only manage well, I can control my circumstances so that I don't have to feel pain. And that's the first time I saw that. If I only manage well, I can control the circumstances around me to avoid pain. And I chased that until I was 22 years old, and I came into these rooms where I continued to try to control circumstances to avoid pain, only to find out later that it's a fool's errand. So I'm terrified of losing my parents. I'm awkward. I have big hair. I'm getting chubbier by the day. I'm really smart, and I'm starting to do well in school, and that also makes me weird and unpopular. And I just feel very alone all the time. And I get to probably the 5th grade. Again, parents are at work. I'm letting myself in. I'm searching the house because now I'm starting to There was a size when I was young, it was called Pretty Plus. I was starting to edge out of Pretty Plus and started to wear like women's plus size clothing, and I'm 10, and my mom sees that as a problem, so she starts to hide my drugs, and I can't find my Little Debbie, and I can't find my Hostess cupcakes, and I can't find all the little like Hershey's miniatures that used to just be around the house, and now I'm looking on top of the fridge, I'm under the bed, I'm in the nightstand, I'm like, where's my stuff, you know, like, where's my stuff? And in the midst of that, I find the liquor cabinet, and my parents didn't drink, my dad with his Crohn's, my dad drank a lot like I drank before I was born, but he stopped, he had a sufficient reason, ill health was his sufficient reason, he was able to stop without a program. I didn't have that choice. Choice left me at some point. But my dad, so we have these bottles they have dust on them. You know, there's Kahlua, there's creme de menthe, there's sloe gin, there's my mom's sangria from their wedding that they're going to open on an anniversary, or so they thought. And I opened the Kahlua. I saw my Aunt Connie. I'd seen my Aunt Connie have a Kahlua and milk at a family function. And so I knew what to do with that. So I mixed the Kahlua with milk, and I sat down in front of Guiding Light because I was learning how to have relationships. And with my Kahlua and milk, I took a sip, and something happened that had never happened before, even with the snack cakes, even with the cupcakes and the Hershey's. I could breathe. The anxiety was gone. It was a miracle. I was okay. I took that drink and it just blasted down through me, and I felt the light. I didn't see the light, I felt it. And I was one with everything, and I was all right. I have been born with this missing component, and when I put alcohol in my body, I felt complete. And my solution was discovered, right? It did not have me yet, though. It didn't have me in 5th grade when I was 10 years old. But I knew it was there. It was hanging out. And so because my drive for perfection, controlling my circumstances were on, I got to 13 and realized I don't want to do perfect. I don't want to work so hard. I really want to go to vocational school and study large engines. So I did. I went to Sussex County Vocational Technical High School, and I studied auto diesel technology because I was going to become a large engine mechanic. And my parents were devastated. They had me going to law school. They were like, she's going to get out of here. It was like the academic Rocky, you know, and that wasn't going to happen. And they kind of had to accept that, and it really it was a bone of contention with my family. My family was very financially fearful, and they just saw bigger things for me, and I couldn't see it. I was more interested in hiding out, you know, because I could hide out in auto tech. You know, I could hide out in a zip up, and I could hang out with guys who didn't ask me much of anything. You know, they just hung out with me, and we were cool, and we were buddies, and I didn't have to deal with girls very much because they were very mean, because I started to get really big. So by the time I graduated high school, I was around 300 pounds. I was a real big girl, and girls were mean, you know, and it was rough, and guys kind of just accepted me, and that was fine. I didn't question it. I was just grateful for anyone who would, you know, pay attention to me and talk to me. And I did not become a large engine mechanic. I ended up in computer school, and I started to do networks, and I graduated in 1997. I'm going to be 39 in 3 weeks, just so you don't have to do the math. And so I went to computer school, and I started doing networks at a time where computers were very popular. It was a big thing to do computers, and they paid you a lot of money to do computers because nobody really got it. And it was terrifying because I'm 19 years old, I'm 20 years old, and I'm going around the country installing retail networks for a fashion corporation. And I'm like, I'm a kid. I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I guess I did because I kept doing it over and over again, but I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. I felt like a fraud, and I am uncomfortable all the time because that fear that I felt when I was a little kid has grown as I've grown. And the food isn't working anymore, and you can tell because I keep having to throw more food at it, and it's just not happening. And I still haven't gotten to that place where I've employed the solution on a regular basis. I'll employ the solution when I go to parties because it's socially awkward to be there and be me and have to talk to you. But when I drink, it's cool. But we're not there yet all the time. Until I get a gastric bypass. So I'm 20 years old and they tell me that I'm going to have a hard time conceiving and carrying. And this is if I look back on it, it was genuine projection because I wasn't trying to have a baby. They just thought that was important for me to know, so I thought I should take an action. And they rerouted my intestinal tract so that way my stomach was the size of a shot glass and everything went right through me. And I couldn't eat. I couldn't eat the way that I needed to eat so that I could feel the sense of ease and comfort, and then so that I could feel whole. And I started to go to bars, and because it was around the same time I turned 21. And I was a very good girl, and I did not go to bars before I was 21. I didn't want to get caught. Drugs are not a part of my story because I was really afraid of doing drugs. You could get in trouble, and they're illegal. It didn't occur to me that driving, blind drunk was also illegal, but logic has never been my best friend. But yeah, I also was not the type of girl that could buy drugs. And because I so envied the cool girls that hung out with the cool guys who had drugs or knew where to get drugs, and I just always felt like it would be this kind of Alice in Wonderland moment where I show up in a pinafore and can I get some pot? And talking to you, and you might take my money and I'd have oregano and I wouldn't know it, So I smoked other people's stuff and I stayed away from it entirely. But man, when I drank, and I started blacking out early on. I blacked out when I was 13 years old in my friend Jody's basement, and awful things happened that night. And I was all by myself, I could have a bad time all by myself. That was the bottom line. And I ruined a good pair of pants, and I didn't think anything of it. It never occurred to me that it might get me. I was afraid to become a drug addict, but it never occurred to me that alcohol would get me because I was really smart and I thought I'd see that coming, And what happened was I got this gastric bypass and I lost 160 pounds in 8 months. And I turned 21 and I'm going to bars, and now dudes are talking to me for an entirely different reason, and I wasn't clear about when that shift happened. And I'm at some point I'm you're just watching my mouth move. And I don't know what to do with that, but I do know that I can get you to buy me a drink. So I made very good capital on that, and I spend, from the time I was 21 to about 23, running through dudes who would buy me drinks, and my drinking escalated exponentially because now I'm drinking with this tiny stomach and it goes right through me, and I'm a super cheap date now. So I having physically altered my body, started to really experience our physical component quickly. When I drank, I couldn't fit more, right? I couldn't keep drinking, but I'm worried about when I can. I'm worried about the next drink that's coming down the pike and what that's going to be and where it's going to be, and will I have to wait very long to get that? And one of the manifestations of this is I remember being at a wedding. The wedding had an open bar for the first 2 hours. So every time I would go to the bar, I'd get 2 glasses of white wine. So by the time that the open bar had closed, there were 9 glasses of white wine in front of my place for the rest of the night. That was reasonable to me. It wasn't happening at any other table, the cavalcade of glasses full of wine, but like that was reasonable to me because I'm going to be here till like midnight, right? So I'm going to need a couple of drinks. And 9 glasses of wine was about right for about 4 hours, right? You know, because I can't stop once I start. I can't stop once I start. Once I start, I'm pretty much off the leash, and I don't know what's going to happen. And by the time I'm 23 years old, I'm so used to blacking out that it's normal. And I don't know that it's called a blackout until I get to AA. I think that when I black out, I go to sleep. But then the people I'm with the next day tell me that that's not what happened. Or I'll wake up with someone and be like, who are you and where am I and how did that happen? And then how'd that happen again? And it was not cute. There were too many mornings that I couldn't find my shoes, you know what I mean? And I started to drink in my house because it was a safer bet. And I adjusted my location to not drinking out of the house and to drinking in the house. And once I started drinking in the house, I started to worry about what I was drinking. I was drinking so much red wine that my teeth were blue. So I stopped drinking red wine and started drinking white wine because the problem wasn't the volume of wine I was drinking, it was the color. And then once I started drinking the white wine and didn't need to mitigate for my aesthetics, I recognized that I was drinking a couple of gallons of wine. That's a lot when you have a tiny tummy. So I started to do the math on alcohol by volume. And by the time I stopped drinking, I was drinking 151 because that's what would work. And that's how fast I needed it to work. And I also didn't have to have like 17 bottles. I could get like 2. And I was the kind of alcoholic that needed to hide my stuff because people were looking for it. Either the hostage that I was dating was looking for it or my father was looking for it because there was no hiding the mess that I was when I drank. I didn't try. I never tried to drink like a lady. I never wanted to do the right about face and drink like a gentleman. That was not my gig. I just wanted to drink without consequences. I wanted to drink where you got off my back. Maybe just went away. That would be convenient if you could do that for me. And it just never happened. It never happened. I never got the okay, you know what, go ahead, drink yourself slowly to death. Just do that. That never occurred. And probably because I lived at home for a while and my parents got to watch that. They got to watch their daughter kill herself. You know, I cannot even begin to imagine what that was like for them. They would come out into the kitchen to find me passed out in front of the refrigerator or passed out in front of the door or passed out underneath the kitchen table. And mind you, my mom has MS, so at this point, she's in a wheelchair full time. She needs a Hoyer lift to get in and out of bed. She's incontinent. I'm changing her diapers. And when my father goes away for bluegrass trips, because my dad is a hippie, my dad's Tommy Chong, right? If I needed pot, I should have just asked my father, but it's just occurring to me in this moment. Sometimes slowly. And he would go away on these bluegrass trips, and my mom would sit in a chair for 4 days because that's how long my runs would last. I would start to drink. I'd black out or pass out and come to and drink, and black out and pass out and come to and drink. And I wouldn't eat for 4 days, and I wouldn't get her out of her chair for 4 days. And you need to just picture what that must have been like for her. You know, and I loved my mother. I would not hurt her for anything. Alcohol was so much stronger than any love I've ever had for anything. God bless you. And so, you know, this is my progression. It went from I like to eat cupcakes when I'm a little kid to I cannot keep it together long enough to take care of my invalid mother for a couple of days. And my progression was very, very quick. I don't have a really cool story. Like, I never met a Colombian drug lord. I never flew to a foreign country and woke up in Panama and how did I get here? That never happened to me. I I was never that cool. I was afraid to try drugs. But what alcohol did for me was absolutely rob me of any sense of self. Like, there was no soul looking back at me when I looked in the mirror. I was terrified all the time. Because what was once my solution was now fuel to that fire. Because every time I left the house after a while, continuing to drink the way that I did, every time I left the house, I knew that you were going to find out. And I don't know who you were, or what it is that you were going to find out, but I needed to make sure that you didn't. I was terrified to look the world in the eye. I was terrified to be a part of anything. I would go to work with my hands shaking so badly I needed a pencil to type my password in. I'm a network engineer. I type all day. This is a problem. And I get to a place where I don't want to drink. I can't stop. I don't want to drink, and I can't stop. And I'm sitting on my mother's bed, and I'm holding a glass of wine, and I'm telling her the truth with every ounce of my being. I don't want to drink, and I can't not drink. I have no power. Alcohol was my master. And I continue to take hostages because, again, I was not about the ladies, but you guys are so easy to manipulate. And I can make... I'm sorry, it's so true. And I can make you want to take care of me. I can make you think that you are going to fix me. You're going to love me enough or direct me enough or control my circumstances enough that I'm going to be okay. And you're going to win the day. And you're going to be that knight in shining armor you always hoped that you would be. And I needed you to believe that because that's what I needed you to believe so that I could survive because I was not going to be able to do it on my own. And that guy, his name was Jeff, that poor guy. Oof. Jeff was the guy that I had taken hostage at the bottom of my drinking, and he tried so hard. He tried so hard to take care of me. He made sure I didn't keep going home with strangers. He made sure that I didn't drive my car home. He made sure that I ate every now and then. He was a good dude. He was a really good dude. And one day, in January, he looked at me and he said, you know what? I think you need to start to look at this. I think you really have a problem. And I had already been long past admitting that it can't stop. What do I do? I don't remember the circumstances on how I got to the hospital, to the emergency room, but when I got to the emergency room to be admitted for a detox, my urine was brown and my blood alcohol level was a 0.38, and I was probably 140 pounds. And on me, that's really thin. And most people, it's average weight. But on me, I looked like death, and my hair was falling out, and I wasn't doing good. And when they took me in, they said that I was going to have a heart attack, that my blood pressure was too high for someone of my age. And I said, okay, and what do I do? And they said, well, when you get out of here in 5 days, they gave me the Librium. I drooled on myself. I did all the shuffle, and I went to AA when I came out. And on January 29th of 2003, I went to AA for my very first time, holding my dad's hand. My dad, and I say that my dad was like Tommy Chong, but he was 6'3", he was 135 pounds. He looked a lot like Lurch. He was a pretty scary looking dude, and he was always cold because he was always thin, so he'd go places wearing a snowsuit, like a full body snowsuit, and a beanie. So I went on January 29th of 2003 with my dad in a snowsuit to the church that I got confirmed in. The church that Reverend Ballins taught me about Jesus and do I want to turn my life over to God. And I'm a Methodist by confirmation. I don't know. But, so just in case this whole heaven and hell thing's a real deal, I'll have a shot at heading in the right direction. But my parents, I had parents that were hippies. They took me to powwows. They taught me that the earth was formed on the back of a turtle. I did not have a God problem. They were like, God is whatever you need it to be, kitten. And I'm like, all right, with my big hair, So I come in here, and I'm holding my dad's hand, and it's a closed meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and nobody asks my dad to leave when he doesn't identify himself as an alcoholic. He says his name is Steve, because that's what his name is. And nobody makes a move for the door. Nobody takes a good conscience. They watch me just terrified, and they knew that if that man left the room, I was going with him. And they broke that tradition in their autonomy, and they let him stay, and they let me stay. And women came up to me at the end of the meeting, and they told me I never need to feel this way again, and here's my telephone number, and why don't you call me? And I was like, no. You're awful. I already know it, because you're a chick, And I was like, I hope I never have to do that again. And they're like, what are you doing tomorrow? I'm like, this isn't a one and done. I don't know. They're like, why don't you come back? I'm like, here? Yeah, we have. And then they pulled out this meeting list, and I mean, it was complete. There was a lot going on in Sussex County, New Jersey. I mean, a lot going on. And I'm 23. This is not what I saw for myself. This was not the level of grandeur I had aspired to reach. And I was like, all right, you told me that meeting makers make it, so I made meetings. And I made meetings for 30 days, and then I drank again. And then I came back, because you told me just keep coming back. And I came back, and that looked like the next 10 months of me drinking every 2 or 3 weeks. Big stretch was 80 days. I got 80 days together. But I would come to your meetings, and I'd sit in your chair, and I'd drink your coffee, and I'd complain, or I'd tell you how it worked. I really like doing that. I read the big book by myself, and about halfway through Bill's story, I get thirsty, because up until the point where, there's Debbie, fresh-skinned and glowing, he's talking about drinking the whole time, and it's like, oh, I got that. I feel you, Bill. I would like 2 bottles and then oblivion. And so me and Ron Bacardi ended up reading the big book, and I have liquor stains. I have liquor stains on my big book. I will never get rid of that thing. I mean, it is ripped away from the binding at this point. It's in chunks. When I sit down with other women, I'm like, oh, what section are we pulling out? And that is my story. That has the handwriting of a scared girl in it. That's my story. That big book is my story. And the only time I could honestly say I'd ever be okay with losing that thing is if it was going to help another alcoholic get sober. But that's it. I will never replace that. It holds so much, and oh man. So 14 times in that 10 months, because I didn't do the one thing. I was not interested in the spiritual component of this program, and I love the spiritual component of the program. I hate to break it to you, the whole thing is spiritual. It's not a spiritual component. The whole thing spiritual. Okay. And they let me figure that out on my own, as I continue to relapse. And I very much so beg to differ with the people that say that relapse is not something, you don't have to relapse. How do you know? If I didn't relapse, I would never understand the depths of my powerlessness. I would never understand that I am going to need God to do it. Because when I got to AA, I thought I needed something a little stronger than God. Like maybe a pill or some kind of enchantment, or, if I rubbed my head and pat my belly, I was going to be all right, But, I didn't think this mythical, imaginary, unseeable, untouchable, untastable, unsmellable thing was going to alleviate the most powerful force in my life, and that was the compulsion to drink. This invisible God was going to alleviate my compulsion to drink, the thing that is stronger than any thought I have. Okay. But I never gave it a fair hearing. I never really considered the spiritual component. And I know that meeting makers make meetings, because I was a meeting maker who made meetings, but I didn't stay sober. I had a coffee commitment. I would come to the church drunk. at 7 o'clock to make coffee for the 8 o'clock meeting. And I do find the value in those suggestions to the extent that they keep getting you back here until you can have that spiritual experience. But it is not sufficient. It is not sufficient to make meetings. You know, there are certain things that our program requires for successful consummation. Successful. I would like that. I would like that part. I would like the freedom part. I like the part where I get to have my own mind for a little while and I'm not an automaton leaving an AA meeting, driving into the parking lot of a liquor store, wondering how we're here again. How are we here again? And on November 29th of 2003, what that looked like, I was house sitting for my sponsor. And her cat was not supposed to go outside, and it was the week of Thanksgiving, and the night before Thanksgiving, the thought occurred to me that a couple of gallons of wine would go great with dinner, and so that's what I did. I drank a couple of glasses of wine, I went to my Wednesday night meeting, I saw my sponsor's sponsor, I gave a big hug, said, how you doing? She said, great. I sat through the meeting, I went home, and I continued to drink. And the cat ended up outside. I made amends to Pounce for a long time. And when I didn't show up to my family's house on Thanksgiving, my sponsor's sponsor came on her first date with who would then become her husband to pick me up and bring me to St. Clair's. My sponsor's sponsor was dating a cop. I was like trying to run up this hill. So my sponsor was at Lake Hopatcong, right? There's a road on top, and then there's a real long steep dip, and then there's the lake, and people build their houses around there, and that's where my sponsor's house was. So I was running in slow motion like the bionic woman, trying to get up the hill to my car, to outrun the cop, to get to my vehicle so I could get out of there without getting caught, because I didn't recognize yet that I was already caught. And Kat and Al brought me to St. Clair's, and they dropped me off, and they said, well, good luck, kid, you're ready when you're ready. And they asked me if I wanted to stay for detox, and I said, no, I have to leave for Tortola on Saturday. And they weren't really, no, you seem to have a very terrible alcohol problem, and you should probably get help for that. And I'm like, I understand that, but I have plane tickets and I have a hotel reservation and I can do this when I get back. You know, that was the delusion, right, that I would be able to come back, that I'd be able to make it back. And I have since been to funerals for a lot of people who don't make it back. And especially with what's going on now, you know. And when I woke up in the detox that Saturday morning that I should have been on the flight to Tortola, I felt something that I'd never felt before, and what that was is the physical manifestation of dropping my hands. You know, it was the moment where I admitted to myself I didn't know. I didn't know how I was going to do this. I didn't know how this was going to get any better. I didn't know if that was the last time I was going to drink. I just didn't know, and I was done fighting. And God took that tiny little minuscule chink in my armor, and he blew in there, and he hung out. And it was not, I did not have the peppermint patty moment. There was no great wind of the mountaintop blowing through and through. It felt like the bottom of my guts dropped out. Like that was it. My shoulders dropped. I spent all my time like this. And it just dropped. And it didn't last, you know, but it gave me that belief that maybe God. And when I came back, my sponsor forgave me. She's a wonderful human being. And we went through the book page by page, word for word, line by line. And she opened the book and she showed me the first page and she said, do you know what this is, Beth Funny? And I said, what's that, Wanda? And she said, that's everything that you know about being a sober woman of honor and dignity. And as y'all know, first stage of Big Book is black. And I said, well, let's do something about that. And we went through, and I went through inventory, and I was as fearless and as thorough as I could be. You know, snakes were on my fears inventory, and that was like snakes and dying by a fire. And she's like, are you afraid of anything else? And I'm like, what else is there? Are you afraid of being alone? What? Are you afraid of losing your parents? Yes. You know, I was so delusional as to all of the cracks that make up my foundation. I was delusional of all the places that I was going to eventually need to invite God in. I was delusional entirely of my agnosticism. And we worked through that, and what it's like now, oh man, it's super good and everything's awesome, and I've gotten really, really good with my humanness for a greater or lesser degree. I had learned to love women. I mean, you guys saved my life. I did not know how to behave. My first group of friends were women who were about as old as my mom was. And they taught me how to act. They first taught me how to dress. They were like, cover it up. Like, if you sit down on it, it's too short. On it. Yeah, too short. Okay, so that became my measure. I was the girl in the dressing room, like, it's good, you know? Because I had no idea how to be a human being. I didn't know how to be a person. I did not know how to be a woman of honor and dignity. I didn't know how to keep a commitment. I canceled everything. And I did it approximately 5 minutes before it was supposed to start. And they told me that being a woman of integrity means showing up. Being of your word. I didn't know I had a word. And now I do. You know, and that was very important. And these women showed me how to trust that I was going to be acceptable even if I wasn't perfect, even if I didn't look perfect, even if I wasn't shaped perfectly, even if I said the wrong thing and was self-centered and foolish, that I would still be lovable. And when my mom passed away, these are the women that carried me through that process, that took the ashes of my mother and helped me to dispose of her remains as I promised her to continue to be that woman of integrity. And I was probably 2.5 years sober when I lost my mom. And it was my reservation when we first did that. Do you have any lurking notion that you can drink again? And I was clear that my lurking notion is if my mom dies, I would drink again. And so my sponsor and I worked at repairing the relationship that I had with my mother so that there was no guilt or shame that I needed to drink to deal with. I didn't need to employ an alcoholic solution because God would have resolved the problem. And that's exactly what happened. I got to be the daughter that I should have been all along those 2.5 years before I lost her. And I got to make those amends, and I got to live those amends, which is much more important than just the words. It's the actions that there come after. And after I lost my mom, I embarked on having a relationship with my father for the first time. My mom was the biggest person in the room. She was a tiny little bit of thing in a wheelchair, but she was the biggest person in the room. She just took the stage, and I got to know my dad, my very cool, dirty, hippie dad. And he was not the dad that I had ordered. He was not the dad of my expectations. He was not my ideal father. And I had to take away all of those expectations that I placed on that poor man when he had the audacity to help create life. And I got to know Steve. And Steve was awesome. He was a good dude. We'd go on dates. Because I started to leave the boys alone, and I started to work on me, and I got to get to know my dad. I got to know what made him laugh and what made him so cool and so weird. Because I stopped studying him as Tommy Chong, and he started to look like Mel Gibson in Conspiracy Theory. He started to like lose it as he got older. It was like, stop taking vitamin E one night. I was like, okay. Yeah. He was very concerned about my vitamin E consumption. He's like, you don't know, you could like bleed out. I'm like, were you watching Dr. Oz again, Dad? were you taking sleeping pills at the same time? And I got to love him right where he was, and I was never able to do that because he should have been a better dad. He should have been this. And he was Steve, and he was good at being Steve, and I loved him as Steve. So when I lost my dad when I was 8 years sober, it was okay. It was okay. I got to be the daughter to him that he deserved. And then I was an orphan, and that was kind of weird. I needed to redetermine what family meant to me. And the women who have consistently carried me through this program, my sisters by God rather than blood, continuously are my family. My sponsor is the executor of my will. She gets everything when I die, which I'm changing in a couple of months. So I'm getting married. I'm getting married, and I have to give it all to him. There's not much. There's a lot of debt. When I got sober, I came to with $60,000 worth of debt when I got sober, and I brought God to that problem. God bless you. Because I didn't know how to handle money. I didn't know how to do anything, right? I didn't know how to dress. I didn't know how to be a lady. I didn't know how to handle money. So by year 5, I was debt-free. And that was just a matter of bringing God into my finances. Because, when they talk about this being the solution to all of our problems, I couldn't understand how I was going to... I mean, the God and alcohol problem I got because I had an experience with it. I didn't get it before I had an experience with it, but then I had an experience with it, and I got it. But I had to take that leap, right? I had to leave reason and just fall and let it catch me, whatever it was. And when it did, I had an experience with it, and I point to that now. I say it works. It works with this alcohol thing. But every other thing, I'm like, well, I've got this money problem, or I've got this sex problem, or I've got this school problem, or I've got this work problem, and I can figure that out. These are Beth problems. The alcohol's a God problem. Because then it starts to look like that did. This starts to look like the chaos and the managing. If I can only manage my circumstances well, I'll be okay and never feel pain. And I put that expectation on work and sex and money and food and everything. And I started to realize that when I applied God to these problems, by simply saying, I don't know, that was so hard, just to say, I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to figure out this financial thing. I don't know how to make you happy. I don't know why I can't do this without raising my voice. I don't know how to do this. Fill in the blank. And be open to not knowing, be open to being shown the way, being open to having God. That's how my God works. It's the thought that comes. The thought that comes. Call Stephanie. The thought that comes. Go to a meeting. The thought that comes. Help. Put out your hand. The thought that comes is never the selfish thought. The selfish thought comes out of the process that is my thinking mind. My thinking mind's a mess. I shouldn't be allowed to hang out there. But the thought that comes is generally the God thought. And I didn't get that for a long time. And it's really hard to have the thought that comes when you're all in here. So just saying, I don't know, stops the machine long enough for the thought to possibly come. And it's nice. It works out pretty well. So when I was 24, I went back to school, and my parents would be really proud to know that I eventually did go to law school. And I did eventually become a lawyer. And I was in Louisiana doing the law school thing. Because, I'm a girl who wet her pants. I shouldn't be allowed to practice law. And that's letting go of old beliefs so that you can have a new experience. That's about as basic as you can get. And they do. The state of New Jersey and the state of New York both agree that I am fit in character and education to practice law, and I get to do that for the great state of New Jersey, and it is absolutely my dream job. I practice environmental law. I get to honor the earth every day in what I do, and I'm so lucky. I have no idea what I'm doing. I keep learning, right? Because I was taught by you guys that kids, sit down and shut up. You don't know. Ask somebody who knows. Ask somebody who's done it. So I do that. And this poor guy, man, my mentor, he's coming to my wedding. I owe him a meal. You know what I mean? Like, I come in his office and I'm like, got the sweat. I'm like, I don't know what to do about this. And he's like, well, you're going to take one step back. You take a deep breath. You put that down because you look like you're going to throw it. He's a good guy. You know, God sends me teachers in every area of my life where I allow that in. I have women in my life that are showing me how to be a mom at the point where we're starting to think about starting a family. How cool is that? You know, I would love to get into the self-pity of like, oh, I lost my mom, I'm not going to have that experience. That's such crap. There are so many beautiful, sober, awesome women doing this way before I do it so that they can show me. So that way I may 50-50 shot on whether or not I'm going to make the same mistakes, right? Like, do I want to be wise or do I want to be experienced? It's a crapshoot. It's where's my ego at that day, you know? And I get to do that. God provides that for me. And I work with incredible women. I sponsor women, and I love them. And they teach me so much. They teach me how to juggle my life. They teach me how to fight nicely. You know, they teach me how to process things that I haven't processed before. And I get to watch the light come on in their life. You know, I was sitting on the couch today with a woman that described her miracle to me in a way that brought tears to my eyes. And I'm so sappy, and I'm crying, and they're like the fat tears that the snot immediately starts to matriculate down your nose. I'm like, listen, man, I'm really sorry. This is really hitting me in like a God spot. And I'm like, this is not who you were when we started this process. And this is just natural for you now. And it has nothing to do with me. All I am is the fairy to that, you know, the means by which discovery is made. It's like being the pickaxe, a tool for the greatest thing that's ever happened, you know. And I don't know, man, like, people get like, I get tired of meetings, and I don't think we have that right. I think that once you have a spiritual awakening, that you have a change in thinking sufficient to bring about recovery from this disease. I think that once you have a profound difference in your reaction to life, you absolutely owe it to the person who has not yet found that solution to show them. You need to be here to do that. You need to be here on a night where it's raining or it's cold or Game of Thrones is on and you don't feel like it, and maybe you've got cramps or your kids are a pain in the butt, or you got that fantasy football league and tonight is like the night that you need to pick a draft. I don't give a crap. Butt in your butt here, man. Because like I don't get to do any of this absent a God. I don't know, man, like the only characteristic my God and I share is love. You know, everything else is just such a human experience. And I get to have that today. I was not experiencing life. I was dodging it for a long time. And I'm going to shut up after I say this, but one of the most important things I ever experienced in this program, I love the book, I love the book, I love the book. All the answers are in the book, do the book. I don't know. Just want to plug the book, right? I feel like you don't want to end up with liquor on your book. And to say that I read it, I don't read the grapevine as often as I should. I don't know, because it's like there's always stuff that you can find in our literature and spiritual literature. Always seek. And I read this thing early on in recovery, and it just made such an impression on me. And it was a tiny little vignette at the end of another story that I can't really recall. And the vignette was a man who got sober and his life looked like craziness. It was like, you know, his marriage was in shambles. He had legal problems. He had money problems. And looked up to God, and he was like, God, I thought that when I got sober, you were going to open up the gates of heaven and let me in. Like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And God leaned down and said that when you got sober, I opened up the gates of hell and let you out. And that has been my experience. And I thank you guys so much for being here tonight, sharing in this with me. So, that's it.
Epic. Let's thank Beth one more time. It's customary for us to take some time to form a line to thank our speakers. They come here at their own time and expense just to share their experience with us. If you'd like to do a little service work, we need some help putting some of these chairs away. We got to leave. This is the tricky part. It's the alcoholic test. We got to leave 7 rows deep with 5 across. The rest go on there. Is that 5? Anyway, we got a nice way of closing. Thanks for coming. There's the meeting after the meeting. Hang out with us. Sounds pretty good.